Yeah, yeah. Steelers by the lake, with the word to say. James Strong, Cody Tanner, host on the mic. About to dive in deep, keep it live, that's right.
Welcome to Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined once again by my co-host Cody Tanner. Cody, nice to see you on this Freaky Friday.
Wacky Wednesday. Now it's Freaky Friday. We're just coming up with names for all of them. Oh my Lanta. This Freaky Friday to say the least. We had a Steelers game last night. It didn't go very well. There's pros and cons to things that happened. We're gonna break it all down for you guys and talk about it. James, let's start off with inactives. Who was inactive for yesterday's game?
No real big surprises. I think we pretty much knew how this was going to turn out beforehand. Kyle Allen as the number 3 quarterback per the usual. Scotty Miller obviously was inactive as he's low man on the totem pole in the wide receiver room. Jonathan Ward, same thing in the running back room. Alex Highsmith, not quite ready yet from that low ankle sprain. We're kind of hopeful to see him in the next game against the Cincinnati Bengals, but we'll have some updates between now and then on that. And then Max Sharping, of course, he's a healthy scratch. Also, low man on the totem pole on the interior offensive line. So no major surprises in the inactives this week.
Yep. Yeah, nothing too crazy. We are going to bump right over into talking about this game. And James, it was interesting. Slow start for Pittsburgh. They broke that longest active streak of scoring in each quarter with a big fat 0 in the first. It was 0-0 at the end of the first, and then they ended up being 10-3 at halftime. Pittsburgh was able to put up 3 in the third, and then we wound up getting outscored in the fourth by a point, leading to a 24-19 end of game. And obviously we're going to go down the roster and break down the positions like we normally do, but man, I don't know where to start. There were a lot of things frustrating with this game, how Pittsburgh mishandled the blocking of Myles Garrett, how I felt the team didn't have a proper game plan going into this. I felt like they were trying to force the run when the pass was definitely happening and moving better, especially in this situation, especially when the snow started falling. I felt like both offenses in that situation had advantages in the passing game because defenders can't make decisions very quickly to do things. Like if you try to catch somebody and slip, like we had guys wide open on both sides of the ball there for the Browns and for us just because of the snowy conditions. I feel like Pittsburgh didn't take advantage of that enough in this game. James, what do you think about that?
Yeah, very frustrating game to me, Cody, from an execution, from play calling, from everything, there really wasn't much to hang your hat on in this game. Like after every game, I try to think back and say, okay, who were the guys that were real standouts? If you're a big person into playing the game Madden, they do a team of the week where they put some of their top performers from not every team, but some of the top ones from that week. And I think to myself, did any Steelers play well enough that they should be considered for a team of the week player? And it was a resounding no. There was not a single guy that put a performance together good enough in this game that I would think that it would be even close to worthy of a team of the week player. And that's bad. You got to have somebody stick out in a positive manner. And there were some guys that had good games, don't get me wrong, but we didn't have anybody that had a dominating performance from Pittsburgh. And when you do that, usually you get dominated. So yeah, the only player in this game that I thought that would have been a team of the week kind of person was Myles Garrett. And I hate saying that, but just the execution there, like you said, like that was one of my 3 keys to success was to double team Myles Garrett. And I felt like they basically didn't do it the whole game. You saw some chips where a running back or a tight end would try to throw a shoulder into him. The execution of those was awful. It almost never was effective in slowing him down. The second half of the game, it actually got a lot better. You started seeing guys like fully engage him to actually slow his momentum before Dan Moore had to get involved with it. And that was drastically more effective as all of his sacks were in the first half. So there was some coaching adjustment that was made, but somehow our entire tight end and running back room looked like they had never chip blocked before in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really frustrating in my opinion, because watching this game, knowing what Pittsburgh can do and what we've seen them do, and then watching them come out and try to force the run or force certain things to happen, I felt like a lot of things either weren't practiced or they weren't practiced with urgency. The number of times that we got Justin Fields out on the field to do a fourth down conversion or some kind of play. And the first one, I mean, they were snapping the ball with literally 0 seconds on the play clock, and not because that was designed. Like, sometimes you run the play clock down. That's how they do it. But no, they weren't even set until maybe 1 second left on the play clock. And I just feel like there needs to be some urgency from somebody to get those plays going, to get on the field. Because as a coach, you want to see the matchups. You want to see what the play looks like to figure out, okay, do we need to call a timeout? Do we need to change something? The quarterback needs time to read the defense. There's no chance for any of that the way those plays were run. And it's very frustrating. One play, I will admit, that I think Justin Fields took a wrong route on. He had an open lane, kind of left. He might have had to go outside. His edge blocker, which I think it was Jalen Warren on that play, but he had space to go, and he wound up running right into like 4 people that just tackled him. Now, Justin Fields also had a massive 30-yard run at one point. I thought he bursted out, and he honestly could have scored on that play. I was upset with a couple things of Pat Freiermuth's blocking frustrated me in this game. I don't know if I just paid more attention to it this game or what, but I felt like he could have done a better job blocking. There were just a lot of miscues that shouldn't happen. Yes, it was a short week, but the Browns had a short week too. That's no excuse. I was just really frustrated with play calling and everything. James, I'm gonna break down a number for you real quick, and then we can do our normal. You can share something else if you want, but then we can do our normal breakdown. On first downs that Pittsburgh had, out of 26 plays, 18 of them were run plays, averaging 2.7 yards per carry on first down. However, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those plays went for negative yards. And then on pass plays, we did 8 pass plays out of those 26, averaging 4.75 yards per pass attempt on first down. Now, that number is obviously better. Passing sometimes is easier to get big chunks of yards. I will say, in defense to things, 2 of those plays happened on the last drive that I counted first down. So they're in prevent defense. There's a little bit more room. Granted, one was for 9 yards, one was for 0. But still, I was frustrated to see the number of times and how much Pittsburgh came out on first down and ran the ball, because I felt like they were so predictable. And that's what teams have been saying about us for years. And I don't quite understand it. James, I don't know if you have something else you want to share about this, or if you want to dive right into the Russell Wilson passing stats and we can go from there.
A couple of things. Number one, of those 8 passes, how many of those were incomplete?
3.
3.
4.
4 of them. Okay, so
4.
only 50% of them were actually positive plays.
Yep.
So that's tough. To me, the Justin Fields package just didn't work in this game. And some of it was on him, some of it was on timing, and some of it was on blocking just completely failing. But the one that you mentioned about him going to the right and running into 4 defenders instead of going to the left, it was actually Mason McCormick that pulled from right to left, and he had a one-on-one with the only defender over there. And if Justin Fields goes behind him, he probably scores a touchdown, because there is no one else there. All the defenders are on the other side of the field where he's not supposed to run on the play.
Yep.
So I really don't know what he was thinking on that one. It doesn't get any easier than to just follow that guy, especially when Mason McCormick's best attribute as a blocker is as a pulling blocker. In the run game, he's excellent pulling and creating holes and hitting that block. So that one, Justin's just got to better mentally trust what he sees on that, or trust what's supposed to be there, because in that particular case, it absolutely was there, and he just didn't do what he was supposed to do. Offensively, I felt bad for both quarterbacks in this game, because they're just running for their lives because the pass blocking was so atrocious in this game. Specifically, Dan Moore was just absolutely abused. He could not even slow down Myles Garrett. He wasn't getting any help all game long. At one point in time, they showed that Myles Garrett had been double teamed 8 times in the game. And I don't know how the hell they came to that number because he hadn't been double teamed once. There were some attempted chip blocks, but there was never an actual double team. So they just completely made that up. Kind of what you're going to get when you're using an Amazon crew for recording statistics. They just don't know football like that. But just atrocious. When Russ actually had time, he made some throws. I mean, he had 270 yards passing, for crying out loud, and completed 75% of his throws on a day that he's running for life and got sacked 4 times. Like, you just got to do a better job of keeping the pocket open, because Russ was picking them apart when given the opportunity, and just unfortunately was under duress, it seemed like, the entire night. So very frustrating for me. I thought that also Isaac Seumalo had a rough night. He kept on getting pushed back into the backfield. One of the sacks that Dan Moore gave up, he actually appropriately pushed Myles Garrett up the arc, but Seumalo got absolutely annihilated, which gave Russ nowhere to go, and he had to kind of step back to get away from it, which put him right in the arms of Myles Garrett. So the interior guys got to hold up better than that. And in this game, to me, the only one that didn't hold up real well in pass blocking was Seumalo. He was getting pushed around a bit. So just got to clean it up, man. And there's no reinforcements coming until possibly the end of the season. And I really don't think even when Troy Fautanu comes back, they're going to move Broderick Jones over to the left-hand side. Although Broderick's been better the last 2-3 weeks now, I'm not 100% sure that putting him at left tackle is going to fix the issue this year.
Yep. Yeah, I genuinely don't know, unfortunately, which is really frustrating. And you talked about the chip plays. There were a couple plays that Myles Garrett did get chipped, and one of them, Darnell chipped him. And I don't know if, and we talked about this before the show, James, we don't know if the Steelers players know how to chip well, because they're just pushing him and running away. That's not a chip. Like, a chip is hitting him, making him off balance, doing something, getting in his way, interfering some kind of way. All Darnell did was push him past Dan Moore Jr. Dan Moore Jr. lost the edge and got beat downfield because because dear Lord, Darnell Washington pushed him past him. And that led straight to a sack, which was very unfortunate. And James, just to give you a number, this is through week 8. I don't have an updated number from Pro Football Focus. They have the chip percentage now. TJ Watt through week 8 was chipped 31.6% of the times that he's rushing. Myles Garrett was chipped 21.9.
Yeah.
So a 10% difference. And in this game, I only saw Myles Garrett get chipped 3 or 4 times. And again, they weren't real proper chips. Like, TJ's getting literally guy full in his face, getting in the way of him pursuing his blocker or the quarterback or whatever his angle he wants to take. Pittsburgh needs to improve on that if they're going to have a chance in winning the second matchup, which is just in 2 short weeks against Cleveland.
I would say I saw probably at least a dozen times where they chip blocked, but they were so ineffective that it seemed like you might as well not even count it as one, you know? And a lot of this is even as basic as the guy not even touching him, trying to throw a shoulder and not landing anything at all. So it basically didn't help in any way. The adjustment that I saw in the second half is you started seeing more of it being tight end responsibility, and more of it being them engaging with 2 hands into Myles Garrett to give him no choice but to actually slow his momentum a bit before he then went into his attempted pass rush versus the offensive tackle. That was drastically more effective. And that's what was done in the second half. And that's where we scored all our points, was in the second half. So just it's frustrating that they couldn't make that adjustment earlier in the game without it being a halftime adjustment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even at halftime, I feel like they didn't make a ton of adjustments, which was the frustrating part for me. I feel like Pittsburgh struggles at making those adjustments. I've talked about it for a while now. Now, sometimes they come out and it's like, oh, we're a whole different team. Oh my gosh. I really felt like they needed to come out in the second half and dominate the passing game. And I just don't think they even tried to until they were forced to. which was really, really, really frustrating for me. But I mean, let's talk about it. Russell Wilson, like you said, 270 passing yards, 9.6 average. He was almost averaging a first down on his pass plays, which is phenomenal. 1 touchdown, no interception, sacked 4 times, unfortunately. And then Justin Fields was 0 for 1 on a long bomb to George Pickens, which I thought was actually a fairly decent play. Had a guy right in his face and unfortunately missed a little bit. Not Russell's greatest game, but not his worst game. I actually thought some of the throws were really accurate, really on point. We just weren't doing it enough. I mean, the touchdown pass to Calvin Austin was fantastic. A lot of the deep balls that he did with George Pickens were good, and George was being George. And then even some of the plays of the tight ends were really, really nice. I don't understand why we got away from it. The one thing that I will say that sucked that it happened that way was the long bomb that wasn't a touchdown to Calvin, because Calvin had his guy beat by a mile. And unfortunately, Russell, just like Justin did, had a guy in his face, was able to get the ball there, thankfully, but did underthrow him, and he was able to get tracked down and tackled. But Calvin Austin's making a name for himself for sure.
Yeah, nice game for Calvin, right? And I'm with you on the frustration on the ones that did miss, because there was the one in the end zone to George Pickens also, where he just threw it over the wrong shoulder, and Pickens did not have enough time to adjust to it to try to get to it. It was off by too much, and George had his guy absolutely dusted too. So it was just the difference of George was stretching it to the right because he had an endless amount of room to the right side of the end zone, and Russ expected him to go further towards the center of the field as he continued the route. So a hair of miscommunication between the two on the play, but you got to get those, right? When your receivers beat the guy that bad, you got to get those. And it's crazy because we're looking at this performance where he completed 75% of his passes. He has a touchdown, 270 yards, and we're frustrated by those 7 plays that didn't hit. But those 7 plays that didn't hit, you could have had 2 more touchdowns on the board, and then you definitely win the game at that point.
Yeah. And real quick, James, we can talk about this. We talked about that 4th down attempt with Justin Fields. I'm going to share this real quick. If you guys are watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. But 4th and 2 here, Cordarrelle Patterson still coming out and getting set with 3 seconds left on the play clock. And then they were able to snap the ball with 1 second left on the play clock. And when you see this play, formulate, you do have Mason McCormick polling, and then you also have Jalen Warren coming over. You're right. Mason McCormick. Yeah, that's all it was. And there's a beautiful lane in this section for him to go. It's not as big as it looks because I've seen it from the other angle. But even if he got outside here, there's a much better chance than him rolling to the right where he's just outnumbered just drastically.
If he goes inside the block, he's definitely going to have enough to get the first down. If he goes outside the block, he might take it for a touchdown because there's no one on that entire side of the field. But he had to go left.
There's one corner, and he's
going right was not an option.
Correct.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's a corner versus Cordarrelle Patterson. You can't tell me Cordarrelle Patterson's not going to lock that dude down.
It's not going to be close.
No, yeah, they're wide, or their corners kind of slender dudes. So chances are good that he puts that dude in the 3rd row.
Yeah,
but
very unfortunate.
Literally, by going to the right, that's the way the offensive line is blocking their guys. They're blocking them.
He pushed them
to the right. So he went right into the direction that they're trying to block their guys into to get him away from where he's supposed to go. Even if he understood the blocking concept on the play, he'd know that going to the right was not an option.
Yeah. And, but again, I do think this was a good game for Russell. I don't want to take anything away from him. I don't blame this loss on Russell. I think if anything,
no, and that was a Fields play that we were looking at there, not a Russell play.
Yeah, and I'm just bouncing back to the quarterback situation as a whole. And quite frankly, outside of the rush plays on 4th down that they threw together, that I don't feel like they practiced enough, because I don't know how you run right there if it's practiced. Like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. I want to ask Tomlin for an explanation because it doesn't make sense to me.
And the frustrating thing to me on that one, Cody, is that the play call was fantastic. It was literally just Justin Fields ran the wrong way. But some of the other ones, I don't see how you had the faith to call those run plays in those short yardage 4th down situations when you're struggling to complete those 1 yard runs all game long. I'm putting the ball in the air in those situations every time because of how the game had gone up until that point. You should not have had the confidence to do a regular run play to a running back because those were the plays that weren't working very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was the fourth down? It was 4th down and 1 that we ran for it. Correct.
And pulled Connor Hayward from the right to the left to be the lead blocker, which is never a good idea. And on that play, Dan Moore got absolutely annihilated, completely whiffed on his guy. And so you got 2 guys in the hole, and it doesn't matter how big your running back is. He's not going through a defensive lineman and a linebacker.
Yeah. There were 7 rush plays on 1st down where we didn't gain more than a yard. So on 4th and 1, when they know that we're going to probably run, and that's why I did enjoy the one play that Justin Fields came in and passed. And people can say whatever they want. Like, why are you putting Justin Fields in if you're going to let him pass? Because that is
he
smart.
Has to. He can't run every time.
Because then they're going to commit run every single time. You have to keep the defense honest. So I don't mind that at all. And he didn't miss that pass by a lot. So I'm not going to hang that on Justin very poorly. That one run we can, say what we need to about Justin and that decision making. There was one play where I thought, let's bounce to the running back room here for a second. Actually, receiver room, technically. Jaylen Warren, let's go down all of them. Calvin Austin, 3 for 78 and the touchdown. Calvin Austin had himself a game. 3 catches, 3 targets, phenomenal. Pat Freiermuth, 4 catches, 4 targets, phenomenal. 59 yards, 14.8 average. George Pickens, 4 catches on 7 targets for 48 yards, a 12-yard average. Van Jefferson, 2 for 2 for 39 yards.
His best game of the season.
That's fantastic. And then Jaylen Warren, 3 for 19. One of those was on 3rd down and 7. And he caught the ball, got hit, and did some crazy ninja moves where I thought his legs were going to break.
And got 6.5 on the play.
Yeah, and made it work. And I think that was probably one of the 4th downs we went for it, and we didn't get it. Actually, I think it was. Which is just frustrating. And then Darnell Washington, 3 for 3. Najee Harris, 2 for 2. All these guys were performing really well. I don't understand why Pittsburgh is afraid of passing the ball more. I understand you got sacked 4 times. Trust me. I understand the pressure was getting there. I understand you don't want Russell Wilson to get hurt. But we were having massive success in the passing game. I don't remember the last time we had 3 players average more than 12 yards per catch. And all of them have more than 1 catch. That's a weird and interesting stat that I'm kind of probably going to nerd out about and go back and try to figure out, because that is massive. That's huge for your big game and building the passing game up. I don't know the last time that happened for Pittsburgh. And so I'm frustrated they didn't go to the pass more. I'm frustrated with how many 18 plays to 8 rushing versus passing on 1st down in my mind. I know you want to control the clock, which we did. We held the ball for 35 minutes. The time of possession wasn't close in this game. It was 35-25. But we still lost. And I want to see us put up more points than 19 against the division rival that's 3-7 or 2-7 going into the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, just frustrated.
Yeah, I'm with you. Very frustrated for me as well. And in the first few drives, they put successful drives together, got between the 30 and 40 yard line. And then that's where things fizzled out over and over and over, which is why you kept on ending up with Chris Boswell kicking very long field goals in very poor weather conditions. And that ends up hurting Boswell because he misses one from 58 yards. And he honestly got out there just in time to basically run up and kick it and barely even got to go through his pre-kick process. So just so much went so wrong in this game. And I feel like, I don't know how much it's being talked about in national media. I didn't get a chance to listen to any of that today. But George Pickens got pass interfered with on dang near every play in this game, and they didn't call it once. The one throw on the sideline, he got tackled to the ground, and there's no flag. The Hail Mary at the end, the dude grabs him and drives him all the way to the back of the end zone. It looks like he's going to try to slam him against the bleachers. George defends himself, and people try to say that he's just looking for a fight. No, the dude was trying to slam him into a brick wall. You have to defend yourself or you're going to end up with broken ribs. He had no choice but to do something to that dude. And there absolutely has to be a pass interference call. That's our best jump ball guy. He's the one that's supposed to be in the middle of that going for the jump ball. No one even gets to the jump ball area because they're all getting interfered with. You have to throw a flag. I get it that they let people go for it and they kind of let a little extra hand fighting go on in those Hail Mary situations, but you can't let somebody be tackled completely out of the play. That doesn't work.
Yep. The one thing I'll say about George, obviously he has to cool his temper down a little bit. I don't mind him playing with passion. He takes it a little bit too far sometimes. The reason I don't think we got that penalty on the last play was because George also had his hand around the player. If you try, like if George stops his momentum and tries to push back and gets pushed over, you can't not call that. Trust me, I understand where you're coming from, James. But the frustrating part is you need to sell it. Like if you're getting pass interfered with, you got to sell it because the refs won't call regular pass interference half the time. You got to show that you're trying to fight for the ball, in that situation, I don't think he did enough to fight for that pass interference call.
Yeah, and I think that's a losing battle for him because the arm he had wrapped around was him trying to fight through it, but the guy's literally under his pads drive blocking him. Like no contact is legal on a pass play past 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. It's already pass interference. You at least have to call defensive holding to give another play to the offense. I get it if you don't want to throw the pass interference play because then you get the ball at the 1 yard line, but you have to at least call a defensive holding because he was unable to even attempt to participate in the play, and it was as illegal as illegal gets. But it seems week after week, these guys are holding him, and nothing's ever getting called. So that's something the NFL needs to get under control. Because if you think George is not keeping his temper well now, let this continue happening and see what happens. He's going to end up in a fist fight with somebody because the refs aren't calling things intentionally against him.
Yep. And I don't get me wrong. I understand. I understand to a degree why they're not calling them, but like at some point, it's pass interference is pass interference.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you like the guy or not. You still have to call the flag.
Yep. Let's go ahead and make the transition over to the running back room. Jaylen Warren, 11 carries for 45 yards on this game, led the team with a 4.1 average, 1 touchdown, obviously, which was from 3 yards out. Najee Harris, 16 carries for 41 yards, only a 2.6 average. Really, really struggled to get some running going with him. Justin Fields, 3 for 26 with that big 30-yard run, so he's lost 4 on the other 2 plays. Russell Wilson, 3 for 10, and then Cordarrelle Patterson had 1 for -2. The team total was 120 yards rushing with a 3.5 average. Not that great. Still better than Cleveland's, but unfortunately just could not get it going enough that it was reliable in any situation. First down, second down, third down, it didn't matter. And I feel like in these games, Pittsburgh needs to be comfortable with saying, okay, Najee's struggling. We need to rely heavier on Jaylen Warren. There's no problem if Jaylen gets the majority of the carries if he's having more success running the ball. I think they need to be okay with making that transition.
And I feel like early in the game, they did go heavy to Jaylen Warren, and it was working well, and then they kind of got away from it, and I'm not 100% sure why. He seemed to be the hot hand this game. And that's one of the things I love about watching Penn State football is that they go with whoever the hot hand is that game. Sometimes it's Nick Singleton. Sometimes it's the other guy. It just depends on the game. One of them's better. He's the one that gets the ball more. Sometimes just your playing style works better against that defense. And yeah, I wish that Pittsburgh would adapt to that a little bit more.
Yeah. And I didn't have to go back as far as I thought I did, James. Against the New York Giants was when Pittsburgh last had 4 players average 12 yards or more per reception. However, Darnell only had 1 for 29 in that situation. But again, that was a game where I thought all around the team played better, but that's beside the point. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of things in the running game need to change. I think that Cleveland, very much like Pittsburgh right now, is Baltimore's kryptonite. I'm not saying Cleveland's anywhere near the way that we are to Baltimore, to us. But Cleveland, we got to figure out the Myles Garrett thing. You got to figure out the running game thing. And if you can't run the ball, be okay with passing it. There's nothing wrong with passing on every down if you're getting positive yards. Now, I understand we talked about the 4 incomplete passes on first down. But again, when you're averaging 4.75 yards per play compared to 2.7, okay, well, let's pass a little bit more next game. Let's see how that goes on first down. I know that we want to run Pittsburgh Steelers football and control the clock, but I'd rather win the game than have time of possession. I don't care if we hold the ball for 12 minutes if we put up 30 points, 40 points, 50 points, whatever. So that's my personal opinion on it.
My last thing on the offense, I feel like it's important that we give a big shout out to Pat Freiermuth. I thought he was absolutely fantastic in this game, beating corners with ease, beating linebackers with ease. If they do more of this in future games, of throwing the ball to Pat 4 or 5 times a game, it's really going to open up this offense. And I think only good things come from that. So loved what I saw out of Pat in this game. Finally a step in the right direction of throwing him the ball more than 2 or 3 times in a game.
Yeah, and what did I ask for? How much did I ask for 15 or 20 pass attempts to you got the written down. We're ready.
It was 15 pass attempts to non-George Pickens. So It has to be tight ends or the other wide receivers, running backs don't count.
Okay. So I'm not so 7, 10, 14. We got 13. 13 out of 15.
Close.
Very close. But it is what it is.
2 more, maybe we get the win.
Maybe. You don't know. Let's talk offensive line real quick. Obviously, we talked about the struggles of Myles Garrett and Dan Moore Jr. I thought Broderick Jones did okay when he had to go up against him. It wasn't as often as Dan Moore because
didn't give up a sack.
Nope. It didn't at all. But
no, I honestly thought
Zach Frazier did technically. I wonder if they gave him that stat. Zach Frazier, they did a twist or a stunt move, and Myles ran right past him. He barely got a hand on him. So I bet you that goes down as Zach's first sack allowed.
Yeah, that probably will. And I feel like from Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Broderick Jones, that was the best side of the line in this game. Those guys had a much better game than what we got out of the left side. So at least that is a promising thing for the future. It's nice to see Broderick Jones stacking some good games, specifically as a pass blocker, as to where he was really struggling with that early on in the season. So hopefully he can continue that, and then maybe that gives you a little bit more something to look forward to at the end of the season and even into next year if he does continue to make that move over to the left-hand side.
Yeah. James, real quick, who do you think has the most they need to improve this year from a running or from a offensive line standpoint? Obviously, Dan Moore. But where do you think the biggest weakness is on that offensive line?
Right now, it's Dan Moore's pass blocking. 3 weeks ago, I would have said it was Broderick Jones' pass blocking. But that's how the season is evolving. It's kind of ironic that as Broderick Jones is cleaning up his pass blocking and is scoring well with Pro Football Focus of other people, now all of a sudden Dan Moore's completely falling apart in it. Dan Moore was typically a very good run blocker. In this game, he didn't run block well either. So to me, in this game, he was the biggest weak link, and I would have put, unfortunately, Sayamalu at number 2 is the second weak link. I thought the other 3 guys played a lot better than him in this game.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I really think that the offensive line needs to have some improvement, especially against these tougher defensive lines. I need to see more from, the offensive line with their blocking ability to give these guys time to throw the ball. But real quick, James, let's take a hot second to go ahead and to give a shout out to our sponsor, Edinburgh Hotel Bar. James, Edinburgh Hotel Bar has supported us. We're very thankful for that. They are located at 100 Meadville Street in downtown Edinburgh, providing a variety of lunch and dinner items every day, along with full-service catering and private party accommodations. Details are available at the number you see on your screen or online at edinburghhotelbar.tripod.com. So again, we can't thank you guys enough for supporting us. Very, very excited. Go check them out when you get a chance. James, let's transition to the defensive side of the ball.
Let's go, man. A little bit to talk about on the defensive side. I thought that I'm just going to go straight to the linebacker room with Patrick Queen. I thought he was good again. all over the place, getting all kinds of tackles involved here, a pass deflection. He's really starting to show why he got as much money as he did. The last few weeks, he just keeps on putting together good performances. Got to get a little bit more around him, right? I don't know that we're getting as much out of Elandon Roberts and Peyton Wilson as we would like at this stage. Not saying that Peyton Wilson won't produce. He did at least get us that nice interception last week. But again, I just kind of felt like it was way more Patrick Queen, although Peyton Wilson got a lot more tackles this week than he had in previous weeks. So step in the right direction there. And they kept the rushing game to a very low average in total for the Browns as well. So you got to give them credit for that. It's just they couldn't stop them on fourth down to save their dang lives, man. They shut them out on third down, didn't let them convert any, but they converted every single fourth down they attempted in the game, and a few of those got touchdowns.
Yep. Very unfortunate that happened. But then again, I thought they did a good job of their fourth downs. They, the scramble by Jameis Winston, unfortunately,
Herbig got held so
the refs
bad.
missed a very big hold on that.
Herbig got straight tackled. They have to call that, but they didn't call any holding penalties against the Browns in this game.
Nope. And I don't know why, and I'm not going to read into it too much because it's just going to frustrate me and infuriate me, and I don't want to do that. James, real quick, I do want to highlight somebody that did comment on our last YouTube video. I want to talk about it real quick because I think there's some importances to it. Granted, it's a little different. A good friend of the podcast, Jay Gluss, commented his 3 keys to success for beating the Browns. His main point, I'm not going to read necessarily all of it, is every point starts off with recognize that Thursday night football is not real football. And the only way to really win is to exit the short week without any injuries. I agree with that. He also talked about how no matter what happens, we'll still be in first place in the division. He's not wrong. So keep that confidence and momentum going into the following week, which is going to be against the Bengals. I agree with that 100%. And then also it's essentially another bye week is in his opinion. Sometimes the NFL assigns you win. Sometimes it assigns you loss at the end of the day. You got to take advantage of the extra prep time for the week. I don't know if I agree with that or not. I mean, it sucks when you watch the holding calls not get called and it doesn't make sense. And I wish that the NFL would talk about that more. I feel like they kind of ignore it. There's certain, you'll get the thing online with a former ref said they missed a call, this or that. I wish the NFL would acknowledge when they make a mistake and things like that, to at least say, oh, hey, like they realized it. But I would like to get some explanation for some of those things because that hold on Nick Herbig was just bad.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely horrible. It's a game-changing play. It shouldn't happen like that. It's very frustrating. But going back to the middle linebackers, James, I'm with you on Patrick Queen. I thought he played very well. The one pass defended was really nice. Peyton Wilson didn't have any splash plays that I saw in this one. We will talk about briefly. Elandon Roberts went down with an injury for a little bit. I don't have an update on that right now. He was able to hit the quarterback once. Not seeing any splash plays or big things out of the middle linebacker group this week. Like you said, Patrick Queen, we got to see some good plays, but I want to see a pick. I want to see a forced fumble. I want to see, meeting somebody in the hole, stuffing them, Nick Chubb. I don't know. Just didn't feel like we got enough out of that middle linebacker room.
Yeah.
Outside linebackers was kind of worse. Outside of one.
Yeah, I felt like TJ was a monster versus the run, but they just nonstop double and triple team on him against the pass, so he never got a chance to get even one-on-one that I saw in this game. Nick Herbig got some pressure in the game and even got a strip sack in the game, but again, crucial holding penalty was not called, where he had his man absolutely torched, and why in the world they wouldn't throw that, I have no idea. Just not enough production out of the outside guys, in that gives Jameis Winston time to throw the ball, So that's an issue. And I felt like very little to no contribution pressure-wise from Preston Smith and Jeremiah Moon in this game. So I'd like to see a little bit more from those guys in future games. It'd be nice if we just got Alex Highsmith back and then the rotation changes completely. But we just haven't seen much from a pass rush perspective from Jeremiah Moon all year. and maybe that's something that comes a little bit more for him next year. I don't know. But you got to get it out of the other three. You have to, and it's just not enough there.
Yep. No, I agree. Nick Herbig with the sack fumble, obviously a great play. Obviously a big momentum swing. Ironically, I think it was the interception that happened after I was at the hotel bar, watching with everybody, and the owner Pat turned on Renegade, and the whole bar got hyped. And then, of course, unfortunately, it didn't turn out well after that. But it was nice to see the touchdown and the interception, everything that took place with Renegade playing. If you've been to a Steelers game, you know what we're talking about with Renegade. If not, you got to experience it for yourself. But James, let's go ahead and talk about the secondary. Let's start with the corners. Who you want to talk about first?
Before we get too far, I would like to say Cam Hayward, I thought, had a nice game in this. And there was your one token good Larry Ogunjobi play, and then not a lot other than that. In one play that I saw Isaiah Loudermilk utterly dominate Wyatt Teller and just drive him into the back and put a very disruptive play that I think turned into an incomplete pass. Secondary wise, they had a real tough time with their footing in this game, which is understandable with the snowy conditions. Dante Jackson now has 4 picks on the year and is now leading the team, no longer tied with Beanie Bishop, with once again one of the easiest interceptions you're ever going to see on an awful throw that just went straight to his chest and hit him right between the 2 and the 6. Regardless of how easy it was, I have to give the man credit. He's got very good hands. He's been catching darn near everything that he gets his hands on. So, regardless of whether or not he's a great coverage guy or a tackler or whatever you want to say, dude's got good hands and he's at least getting us some turnovers.
Yeah. And real quick, just while I got it pulled up, James, this is that Nick Herbig play we talked about. So you'll see Herbig come in from the top of the screen. For those of you watching on YouTube, he kind of goes back to pretend like he's going to defend the potential pass to the running back out of the backfield. And then he comes in full blazing, full scheme ahead, and gets tugged by 65 just enough that you can clearly, I shouldn't even say just enough. You can clearly see that he gets tugged to the point where it completely affects his momentum. I mean, his momentum basically gets pulled backwards. And unfortunately, that is on 4th and goal and led to a touchdown for the Cleveland Browns. It's just very unfortunate to continue to see those kinds of plays missed, being called, whatever. But no, you're right. Going back to the Dante Jackson thing, you're right. He has caught everything that's been in his hands. That's huge. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking advantage of the opportunities you get, and he's been doing that. So, props to him. Whether or not he can cover, we've seen some good coverage from him and some very, very bad coverage from him, and hopefully that improves. If not, Corey Trice is coming back healthy, hopefully in the next week or two. So, fingers crossed.
I think it's got to be this week. I think he's already been up for 2 weeks. So if they don't activate him this upcoming week, he'll be out for the year.
Yep. Yeah, I thought he played well. I thought Joey Porter got beat on one play. I think that's going to be his first touchdown allowed all year. And again, it was you can't run and push off full speed in the snow. And luckily, in snowy conditions for Cleveland or whoever the offense has full advantage in that situation. If you can juke out even for a slight second or make a defender second guess and you take off, you know where you want to be, you know where you're going. The quarterback knows where you're going to be. There's a massive advantage in the passing game, specifically in these snowy condition games.
Absolutely. Just very, very difficult. They know where they're going. You don't. Your reaction time is drastically slowed. So real big advantage to the receivers in those situations. Thought the safeties had a pretty good game. Minka making all his tackles per the usual. Deshaun Elliott playing well. He's been kind of quiet as far as splash plays ever since the beginning of the year, where he made a lot of big ones the first few weeks. So I would like to see another splash play come out of him sometime soon, hopefully. But I felt like the safety room kind of did their job pretty well, really.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Special teams wise, Cordero Patterson had 2 kick returns for 34 yards. One of them was really bad. One of them was really good, in my opinion. Jalen Warren had 1 return for 26 yards, and then no punt returns. And then Boswell, unfortunately, missing that first field goal. That if he makes that first field goal, which again, that was a time thing. He had to rush out on the field. We talked about that before the show. The time management was off. I mean, they snapped the ball as he was getting set. So he didn't have a whole lot of second to line that up like he normally would. But if he makes that, we can win with a field goal at the end of the game there. We don't need to go for that Hail Mary, and we pretty much were already in field goal position at that point. So 2 for 3 from field goals, 1 for 1 from extra point. And then Corliss Waitman, unfortunately, James, we talked about it. He hasn't had many bad punts. Well, unfortunately, in this game, he had his first and only bad punt. 1 punt, 15 yards. Very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, and I felt like that one had everything to do with the pressure. He was just trying to get that thing out of there because the Cleveland brought the house trying to block that punt. And he got it out, but it only went 15 yards, and that is atrocious. That doesn't help you very much at all. In fact, it hurts you pretty bad.
Yeah, very bad. Very bad. So again, we'll talk about the injuries here. We talked about Landon Roberts. We don't have an update on that one yet. Van Jefferson also got hurt. He did return to the game and finish playing. We obviously talked about his 2 catches for 36 yards, I think it was. So a good showing from him. But again, James, 39 yards. What needs to change? What does Pittsburgh need to do before this next Cincinnati game? Or just to recuperate as a team from this game, not even preparing for Cincinnati?
I think that most importantly, they have to be able to identify when they've got a top tier pass rusher coming and give that offensive tackle appropriate help. That is just hurting them immensely right now. We've got a good passing offense and a passing offense that could be an elite one with time. But Russ is having to run for his life way too much. He's getting sacked way too much. And the Bengals are coming to town. Trey Hendrickson, very good pass rusher. You need to have that plan in place. Yeah, you need to have that plan in place. If you're not putting a tight end on his side, you better make sure the running back is going full into his chest with his chip. You can't just leave that one-on-one. That's not going well. I would not expect that to get magically better in this upcoming game for Dan Moore. If he's one-on-one with Hendrickson, you had better give him help. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about it again and frustrated again. Win or lose, we're going to be frustrated if it's another performance where it's 19, 20 points in the game.
Yeah. And James, I'm going to end on with my opinion on this. I saw a post earlier that talked about how, Pittsburgh fans need to be worried. They fell for another trap game. When you look at the teams we've lost to this year, they're all really bad. I mean, they all 4-5 Colts, the 3-8 Cowboys, the 3-7 or 3-8 Browns now, whatever it is. We've lost to bad teams. We've beaten fairly good teams. This is what I'm going to say. Pittsburgh fans should be drastically worried about how this game was managed, but we should not be worried about how the team will manage other future games. That's where I'm personally at with this. And what I mean by that, James, is this was a short week. I'll give them that. The snowy conditions are unfortunate. That played a factor. You would be arrogant to say it didn't. Unfortunately, Cleveland took better advantage of that. Pittsburgh didn't. And then on top of that, I personally feel like Pittsburgh needs to move on from this game and realize that their identity does not need to be reliant on the run game. If you can pass the ball successfully and consistently, you need to be okay with making that transition. That is my big takeaway from this game because, again, averaging 9.3 yards per catch, obviously that's per catch. There were 7 incomplete passes, or 3.5 yards per carry. You got to go pass heavy. You got to consistently get your guys in positions. And all that's going to do is back the players off the line. All that's going to do is allow more plays for the running back to have somewhere to run the ball, to have a hole open up. If you show that, hey, if you're going to play us well in the run, then we're willing to pass the ball as much as we need to. That's where I think the turning point is. Pittsburgh hasn't shown if you're going to stop the run, we can lean on the pass. We haven't shown that yet. Not once, in my opinion. Now, we've had good passing games, but that's been on the back of good running games. I want to see a play where, where the run's not working. We're going to pass for 350 on your head. Like, we need to commit and show that we can be that threat in the passing game to get this running game to open up, in my opinion.
I think that's a good point. And I'd like to also mention that there's definitely some things that need to be looked at from the correct perspective when you talk about the teams we've lost to. The Cowboys, for example, were 2-2 when we lost to them. They weren't a bad team yet. They still had Dak Prescott. Since then, Dak Prescott has gone out for the year, and I don't think they've won a single game. No, they've lost every single game since Pittsburgh. So they haven't had their starting quarterback the rest of the way. And the quarterback issues that the Colts have led them to losing darn near every game since then as well. They also were not that bad of a team when Pittsburgh lost to them. Also, Mike Tomlin has like the 5th best winning record in NFL history against losing teams. So as bad as you think it is with Pittsburgh, dang near every other team is drastically worse than Pittsburgh is against teams with a losing record. So it's easy to say after a loss, oh, we suck against teams with bad records. We're actually one of the best in the NFL against teams with bad records. So just kind of the way that goes. Everybody loses to bad teams throughout the year.
Yeah. The argument that most people would say to that is Mike Tomlin has a much bigger tenure, so he's played more losing teams when you have teams that don't commit to a coach for multiple years. But that's, I mean, it's still the fact that the winning record's there.
He's still better than all of them regardless.
Yeah. With that being said, that's going to wrap up this show. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, remember to like and follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Subscribe, ring the bell. It's free. Doesn't cost you a thing. Don't forget about the 5-star reviews and Apple Podcasts. Make James very happy. And until next time, this is your host, James and Cody, signing off.
Peace.
Steelers by